Welcome to the Career Change Podcast, where you'll discover the frank and practical advice and resources that are already proven to work in the real world when it comes to changing careers or figuring out what business is right for you when you are a smart but likely also stuck, overwhelmed, or overthinking person in your mid-30s, your 40s, your mid-50s. I'm your host, Rikke Hansen, a career change advisor, entrepreneur, and former corporate HR professional with over 15 years experience of helping thousands of people just like you identify or create careers or businesses that are both meaningful and future-proof. Welcome home. Hey, it's Rikke here, and welcome to episode 3 of the Career Change Podcast. I'm going to dedicate this entire episode to analysis paralysis. I've literally designed this entire episode to be a mini masterclass to help you get out of analysis paralysis by getting you out of your head and into the real world. Now, how is that for a thought? So get ready for some really concrete strategies, some transition truths, as well as some emotional support and understanding, right? I get how tough an enemy that analysis paralysis can be. I got you. Analysis paralysis is the nemesis of way too many intelligent people who would love to change careers or love to figure out what business to start, but who end up getting stuck in overthinking instead of taking action. So this is for you, whether you are a midlife career changer or you are an entrepreneur in transition, okay? One of my clients, a lawyer who came to me because she wanted my help with designing her first business, she literally said to me once, Rikke, I feel like my head is a slaughterhouse of dreams. Nothing, even my best business ideas, ever make it alive out of there. Does that sound familiar? Now, you probably keep thinking of all of the reasons why your ideas won't work out or why they aren't right for you before you even give them a chance to get out of your head and prove themselves in the real world. Am I right? Now, let me be frank. Here's my definition of analysis paralysis as it pertains to career change and entrepreneurship. And I've got 15 years experience in the trenches. This is something I've seen happening again and again. What's really happening? All analysis paralysis is when intelligent people spend way more time overthinking than taking action. Analysis paralysis is what's happening when you insist on thinking instead of doing, overthinking instead of taking concrete action. And this is vital to be aware of if you're trying to make a change, because it has to involve the real world outside of your head. Whereas what you're really doing when you insist on analysis paralysis is that when you insist on that overthinking, more research, more thinking, more this, more that, you insist on trying to solve a problem intellectually that can only really be solved by also getting real life and market feedback and input. That's why it's so toxic, all right? So right now you're likely doing more thinking than doing. That's why you're stuck. Now, don't get me wrong. Being an intelligent person and being good at thinking is generally a good thing. Intelligence can be a massive advantage when it comes to career change, entrepreneurship. However, what we are talking about here is what happens is when you overthink, right? We'll talk about how to deal with it when it turns toxic and it keeps you stuck for years or months and it works against your dreams, against what you really want to do. I see this, by this stage, people often come to me and ask for advice for career change, entrepreneurship. They've been stuck in analysis paralysis for like 5, some of them like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. Even our client once, he'd been stuck for 15 years in analysis paralysis. I'm like, I'm so glad you called. Now, analyzing and planning and thinking and researching is, of course, super important, but only if you use it to your advantage and to keep you moving forward, not as a procrastination effort. Because analysis paralysis is literally the number one behavior that intelligent people, they use to delay or procrastinate or never even getting started with their transition because they're still waiting for that one more piece of information or that one more thought or that one more piece of research, and it's never enough. My friend, if you're stuck in that limbo, that holding pattern of analysis paralysis, I want to, from the bottom of my heart, dedicate this episode to you. Let's get you unstuck. It is such a toxic tendency when it comes to career change, entrepreneurship. So let's get you out of there. In this episode, I'll share some really practical strategies and ways of thinking that my clients have told me have been really useful over the years for them to get out of analysis paralysis, that I've helped them get their head around. I'll also very much talk about transition truths, i.e. how transitions, they actually work in the real world and that you need to be aware of, even if you don't like those truths. So I'll give you some phrases that you can repeat to yourself when you get stuck in analysis paralysis to help you get out of there. Please be open-minded. You don't have to agree with anything that I say, but try out the strategies. Just see if they work. Don't turn this into another intellectual bun fight, right? Your dreams are worth a try. So at least I promise you that at least one of these strategies, one of these transition truths will have the potential to be the game changer for you. So keep listening to the very end. All right? Transition truth number 1. You don't need to know or control the entire transition journey up front to get started or to keep going. Let me repeat that. Transition truth number 1. You don't need to know or control the entire transition journey up front to get started or to keep going. And let's face it, there's no way that you can, so stop blooming making it a condition. This is such an important truth to be aware of because, fact, here's what I've observed over the years with those people who don't believe it or aren't aware of it. A lot, and let's make sure this is not you, a lot of intelligent, overthinking people will never change careers or never start their dream business because they insist on knowing and controlling the entire journey up front. They insist on getting their head around the entire career or business transition journey before they even take their first step. That's why they never even take that first step. They never get out of their head and they never start interacting with the real world. They just end up stuck in analysis paralysis. Maybe you know someone like that. Let me get a little bit further inside your head so you can self-identify. Do you recognize yourself in any of these phrases? Let me throw a couple of phrases at you that I hear a lot. I just need to do some more research, some more thinking, some more analysis. The business plan is not perfect yet. Or, I don't have the perfect information to get started. What if I neglect something important and that very piece of information makes me fail down the line? Or, but what if the timing or the data is not perfect? Or, what if something much more perfect or better comes along down the line? Or, I need to have all of my ducks in a row before I start. Can you relate to any of those ones? And did you also notice the word perfect popping up a lot? Yes, analysis paralysis tends to go with perfectionism too. Double whammy. And do you also get a whiff of control freakism in any of those things? Right? We at least got the holy trinity that makes up analysis paralysis here. Analysis paralysis plus perfectionism plus control freakism. No wonder you're stuck, right? You want to control as many factors up front and as far out as you can as possible. And then there's perfectionism because you think that if you just get it perfect before you even start, then you won't fail. But if it's not perfect, then you'll fail. Now, how is that working out for ya? And are you moving at snail speed, if at all? TikTok, right? Most of my clients are over 35. You might be over 35 too. So time is of the essence. Don't mess around. You are ready. You've been training for this your entire life. Get on with it. Here's a shock. Here, let me give you a shocker statement from one control freak to the other. Trust me, I'm a recovering control freak. I totally get where you're at. You are going to have to give up the illusion of total control if you want to transition into or create something new. But don't worry, you don't have to give up all control. Phew! All you have to do instead, and remember, whenever you feel analysis paralysis coming on, is to focus instead on the few things that you can control and that you can do something about. And you know what? They're the ones that are right in front of you. The actions right in front of you, the next step right in front of you, they're not the ones way down the line. Here's what I mean by that. Have you noticed? What keeps you awake at night is rarely that step that's right in front of you. The step that if you really wanted to, you could take that step right now. Heck, you could even control it. It is rarely the step right in front of you that you are overthinking. And that is what we want to change. Here's what I mean by that. What is likely keeping you awake at 3 a.m. is that you're worrying about some really vague step that you might be taking 6 months down the line or 12 months down the line or 18 months down the line, that right now there is no way that you can know it or control it. That's why you're freaking out, right? So often I see people, like, I don't know where you personally are at in the career transition journey, but generally you start with figuring out what you want, then you go into test driving it, and then you go into launching it. And often what keeps people awake is that they jump between the stages, and you need to go through each stage to get the information, to get the clarity before you go to the next stage. So often I see people who haven't even figured out what the right career or what the right business is for them. And then they start worrying about how it's ever going to happen or when it's going to happen. That what they haven't even figured out, or they worry about whether, if they really should be focusing on test driving, they worry about whether they actually are going to like it or whether it's going to make money, instead of just focus on test driving, okay? So come right back to the present, my friend, whenever you find yourself stuck in analysis paralysis. You cannot leapfrog the transition stages. You need to get the clarity at each stage to move on to the next one. So when you're on analysis paralysis, it's because you're trying to leapfrog ahead and control and know something you can't. So come right back to the present. Whenever you feel analysis paralysis, it's because you are getting ahead of yourself. So rather than choosing to focus on the concrete action that's right in front of you and that you can do and you can control tomorrow or the week after, right? Focus on what's right in front of you. That's so important. In order to successfully change careers or start your dream business, you do not need to know the entire journey up front, and you can't. All you need to know and all you need to focus on whenever you're overwhelmed is the step right in front of you. Here's an analogy for you, because this is so important. And I think you're going to find this analogy really helpful next time you get stuck. Changing careers or starting your own business, starting the next business, is a bit like going on a treasure hunt. In order to get to the treasure in the end, you need to focus on the next clue right in front of you at each step. And that clue will then give you the clue to the next step that you need to take, and so on. A successful career transition is just like a treasure hunt. You need to focus and execute on the clue in front of you to get to the next one. So next time you're finding yourself in analysis paralysis, remind yourself that what is happening is that you're getting way ahead of yourself. Come right back to the present and focus on the clue right in front of you. That should also appeal to the control freak in you, right? Which is what I really want to do. You have a lot more control right in front of you than trying to figure something out that you can't yet because you don't have the information. Okay? Come right back to the present. And the real problem here, what is really happening when you get into analysis paralysis at 3 a.m. is that you're trying to intellectually figure out or solve or control a problem that cannot just be solved purely intellectually, purely inside of your head. But it can only be solved by experimenting, by getting real life feedback, i.e. by getting out of your head. So let's talk about that next, because all of these transition truths, they build on each other. So transition truth number 2, the antidote to analysis paralysis is getting real life feedback. Not more research, not more overthinking. Let me say that again. Transition truth number 2. The antidote to analysis paralysis is getting real life feedback. Not more research, not more overthinking. Now, once you have some concrete ideas, some good basic ideas for what is the career you want to transition into, what's the business you want to start, then your focus on a day-to-day basis should be squarely on execution and experimentation to figure out if your idea is right for you, right for the market, and on getting real life feedback early on. And if you've done that, then your focus should be squarely on launching. Now, if you don't know what it is that you want yet, what career or what business, that is all you need to focus on before you do anything else. Don't get ahead of yourself. And by the way, if you want help with that, figuring out what career or what business, what kind of change you need, I've got a program for that. Call your career change map. Hit me up over at thecareerchangepodcast.com if you want more information. But anyway, just back to clarifying where you are at in the transition process, okay? So when you are stuck, here's the strategy for you. Whenever you're stuck, whenever you are in analysis paralysis, overwhelm mode, here's what I want you to ask yourself. What is my next step? What is that step right in front of me that I really should be focusing on? Is it figuring out what I really want, or is it test driving it, or is it launching it? So what is my next step? And then also make sure that step includes an outcome, action-focused verb, and ideally also other people. Who can you call? Who can you connect with? Who can you make an offer to? Who can help you? Versus just more research and thinking. You likely need to get out from behind the computer, out of intellectual overthinking mode. Can you make an offer to a new client? Can you design a workshop to figure out if you're even going to like doing this thing? Can you go on a weekend course? Can you network? You really need to make friends in that new field. Do you even like the people who work in that field? What is the one thing that you can do today so that by taking that first or next step, it will bring you closer to the reality of having changed careers or started your first business? What is your next step? Make sure it involves other people and an outcome-focused action verb, okay? Here's why it's so important for you to get out of your head and into action very early on in the process, as soon as you have some clarity around what it is that you want. One of my favorite quotes that I like sharing with my clients, whether they want to be entrepreneurs or not, is from a very famous Silicon Valley entrepreneur called Steve Blank. And here's what Steve says. No business plan survives first contact with customers. No business plan survives first contact with customers. Even if you don't want to start your own business, it's the same thing. Your plan will not survive the first contact with reality. So stop spending so much time on the plan before you start involving the reality. What I've noticed again and again is analysis paralysis. I can literally guarantee you this. Analysis paralysis is you overthinking your own existing assumptions, or is you are overworking the plan that has never made it further than your own head. Analysis paralysis tends to be almost like putting on these really toxic blinders and insisting on, we can figure this out ourselves. We're so bloody self-sufficient. Here's a tip. Get help from other people. Try real world action and market feedback instead. By the way, I'm the self-sufficient type. I know how hard it is to ask for help. The answer is likely outside of your head. You need to experiment in the real world. Ask for help. Speak to potential customers. Speak to potential employers, people who work in their field. Network. Build their new group of friends. The answer comes through other people. The answer comes through real life testing. Don't build a business for an imaginary audience, or don't just blindly research alternative careers. You need market feedback. Once you have clarity around what it is you want, you need to start getting out there, experience yourself doing and creating things related to it. Don't try to think your way through to whether something is right for you. Oh, should I retrain to become a naturopath? Or should I retrain to become a lawyer? You need to experiment in the real world. The subject, the people, the cultures, the things that those kind of people, they do. Just break out the individual ingredients and start test driving. I love the word experimentation, especially when people are over 35, because we're not really used to it. When did you last experiment, right? This is often what I find when people are over 35. I actually think that's often what leads to a lot of the crisis that people have, because they just done potentially the same job or the same line of business for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And if they don't like that, then no wonder they feel bored and stuck and don't feel meaning or passion or anything like that. We need to create that. You cultivate that by experimenting, by putting together experiments in the real world to approximate what it is that you want to do next. So you get to know yourself better. Does it give you meaning? Are you good at it, right? Does it make money? This is so important. Analysis paralysis is a static or never-ending loop of intellectual navel-gazing. Experiments, they're dynamic and they give you the feedback you need for this particular stage of your life. You are probably, if you like most of my clients, a lot of them fell into their line of work straight after uni and then they've just been at it. So you made that choice many years ago. You are hopefully a very different person now. You need to experience who you are now, right? And also, my fellow control freak, experiments. They're not meant to be perfect or 100% controllable. They are meant to help you understand yourself better. One of the biggest gifts you can give yourself if you want a successful career transition or become a successful entrepreneur is to become insanely curious about who you are and what you are capable of doing in this world. Let that drive you. As you can probably tell, I have an immense understanding of perfectionism. It has been a struggle for me my entire life to overcome that beast that is perfectionism, and it's caused so much pain. And I see that with my clients as well. And I tell you what my antidote to perfectionism is getting insanely curious about how, just who I am and what I can create in the world, even if it feels less perfect. I'm more driven by figuring out what I'm really capable of doing. I'm less my biggest fear will be not figuring that out in this lifetime. I'd much rather end up doing things that aren't perfect than they might fail, but I would not want to risk going to my grave not knowing what I'm truly capable of doing. So try to borrow that mindset, get insanely curious about who you are and what you're really capable of doing, all right? So focus less on getting that flawless plan first and focus more on figuring out, are you going to like it? Experiments with it. Does it give you meaning? Do you feel good at it? Do you like using these skills? Does it make money? There is no done here. Your life's work is ever evolving. So get started and keep going. All right. Transition truth number 3. Your transition only starts when you move from intellectual exercise to behavioral commitment. Let me repeat that. Transition truth number 3. Your transition only starts when you move from intellectual exercise to behavioral commitment. Skin in the game, my friend. Skin in the game beats analysis paralysis. It's not enough with intellectual skin in the game. We need real physical skin in the game here. Let me ask you a really frank question. Just look at the last 3, 6, 12 months to 2 years. Do you have external proof that you're really committed and invested in your transition? What are you putting on the line? What behavioral changes have you made in how you spend your time, your money, your resources? Is it clear that your transition is your number one priority? What have you actually changed in the time that you do have available to dedicate to this or the time that you claw back? Let me talk to your inner control freak here, because this is actually going to be where it can help you. And behavioral commitment is when you become an active creator and participant in your transition outside of your head, instead of just trying to control it remotely, intellectually. If you're a control freak, this should help you reframe things. You want to be an active control freak with active participation and active creation versus just being this really naive control freak who thinks they can control the world and figure out things intellectually with no real life participation or creation. I'm poking at you here, but you know what I'm talking about. This is especially the case. I see a lot of people who are like, I really want to start my own business. But if you've only ever been an employee and you still think like that, then you might just spend your entire life researching and overthinking. Nah, you need to test drive. You need to ship something, a service or a product in order to create money. The longer you stay in indecision analysis paralysis versus proper thinking and active decision making, the less money you're going to make. And that's probably why you're still stuck. So let's put some skin in the game. I have this fun exercise I give to my private clients that I call skin in the game, or Rikke on your shoulder, or the external proof test. So if you're a client listening to this, you'll probably have heard one of those. Here's how you know that you are getting out of analysis paralysis and putting skin in the game. Imagine you have a mini version of me. If we met in real life, I'm quite a petite person. So imagine you have a mini version of Rikke sitting on your shoulder. Now, I don't know what's going on inside of your head, but all I can see is what's going on in the real world where there's external proof. So imagine I've been sitting on your shoulder for the last 3, 6, 12 months and followed you around and saw what you're doing every day on a minute-to-minute basis, every week, every month. Would it be obvious to me from the external proof and actions I would observe you take in the real world that your transition is your number one priority. What external proof do you have? Just think back over the last 3, 12, 16, 18 months. Did I see you reach out to have conversations with people who could help you, make offers, do a course, run a workshop, try something new for the sake of it, experiment things, ask for something, maybe even start changing behavior in your current workplace, raising your hand in meetings, pushing back on work hours? If I looked in your calendar, would I see time consistently set aside for you to experiment, figure out what you want, test drive it, launch it, right? The biggest thing that probably is getting in your way is you're treating your career transition, your business transition like an intellectual exercise. You're trying to control as many factors as possible intellectually because you want to be perfect, you don't want to fail, versus actually committing to start taking even the smallest external actions in the real world to start getting feedback. Where are you investing your time, your money, your resources? Is that what you need to change? So if you're stuck, that is likely what's going on. Remember, don't get ahead of yourself. Whenever you're in analysis paralysis, you're likely trying to intellectually get ahead of yourself. Come right back to the present. Do you need to focus on figuring out what it is that you want? Do you need to focus on test driving it? Or do you need to focus on launching it? Stay in that zone and get clarity on that first before you can move to the next one. All right? Figuring out what the right career or what the right business is for you is the most important thing for you to get clarity on, because it'll drive everything else. And once you're more clear, you have some front runners for the what, then you start going into the test driving phase to figure out if you're even going to like it, if it makes money, if there is skill in it, if you can build a network in it, the whole reality check. And once that's clear, then you can launch it or go back to stage one. But it's so important. Don't get ahead of yourself in the transition phases. But remember, often and as soon as possible, get out of your head and into the real world. If in doubt, what is the one action that you can take to help you figure out what it is that you want, or to test drive it, or to make it happen, depending on where you're currently at in the transition process? So let me recap all of this. Transition truth number 1, you don't need to know or control the entire journey up front to get started or to keep going. All right? Just make sure, whenever you get ahead of yourself, come right back to the present. What is that one thing you can control and do right now to get the clarity to go to that next step? Remember the treasure hunt analogy. Focus on execution, that thing right in front of you that you can control, that you can do something about, because you need to do that in order to get the next clue. All right? Transition truth number 2, the antidote to analysis paralysis is getting real life feedback, not more research, not more overthinking. So get out of your head. Fall in love with experimentation, with test driving, with trying new things that involve other people and the real world, like a real action verb. Be insanely curious about who you are at this stage in your life. What rocks your boat, what sets you on fire, or at least gets you into a more excited state. Transition truth number 3. Your transition only starts when you move from intellectual exercise to behavioral commitment. Get into the habit of imagining that I'm sitting on your shoulder. What external proof am I seeing that you got skin in the game? You're involving other people, you're involving the real world, you're putting money, you're putting time, you're committing truly to it. All right? That, my friend, is how you consistently will use your intelligence to drive you forward and to make that transition happen. Use your brain cells to your advantage, my friend. Now we come to the end of the episode, and I trust you found at least one thing that you can say to yourself next time analysis paralysis happens, that you get a really good feeling for how all of this actually works in the real world. I recommend this is the kind of episode you probably want to listen back over with a notepad and then commit to what is it you're going to try out, where you're at in the process, and then take really good care of yourself. And next time you wake up at 3 a.m., you go, oh my God, I'm probably worrying about something that's just way ahead. What is the clarity I need right now? What is the step right in front of me that I can control and that I can do? Because then you go back to sleep, because that you can do tomorrow, and it's something you can control and that you can do. So just play to your inner control freak in that department. Okay. Now, if you like this episode, if you like this podcast, come over to thecareerchangepodcast.com for more. That's where you can subscribe to the newsletter, where you get my best work. If you like this, that you need to be on the newsletter. That's where you get a lot more. It's also where you can let me know what kind of things you want me to talk about in the podcast. So maybe there's something in this episode you're like, Rikke, can you talk a little bit more about this, about that? Let me know. I love connecting with people who are on my mailing list. That's where this conversation continues, all right? Now, also over at thecareerchangepodcast.com, you can, there's a link to how you can subscribe to get the podcast, whether that's iTunes, whether it's Spotify, wherever it is that you're listening. And of course, if you find this helpful, please write a review over on Apple Podcast, over on iTunes. That's how a lot more people are going to find this advice. We're all in this together. Okay, now remember, next time you get stuck, just ask yourself, what is my next step? Make sure it involves an outcome, action-focused verb, and likely also other people. Or you can ask yourself, like I often do this, how can I get out of my head today? What experiments can I run, and who can help me? I'll see you over at thecareerchangepodcast.com. That is where you can find out everything that you need to get cracking and to keep going. See you over there. Thank you so much.